Ever wonder what it's like to realize you've been loved for your money but hated for your skin? I have. 5 years. That's how long I was married to a woman who smiled in my face and shared my bed but never saw me as her equal. Bianca, my wife, was in love with my bank account, my status, but never with me. Never this. Never a black man. It wasn't just the cheating that broke me. It wasn't just the affair. No. It was the realization that the woman I believed loved me, truly loved me, never even respected me. To her, I was a means to an end, a ticket out of her small town life. And why? Because in her eyes, I was never worthy of her love. Not because of who I am, but because of the color of my skin. Yeah, let that sink in. Bianca, my beautiful white wife. I thought she chose me because she saw something in me, something beyond what the world saw. But in reality, she couldn't stand the sight of me. To her, I was just the rich black guy who could give her a life she couldn't get anywhere else. That's what hurt the most. Not that she was sleeping with someone else, but that she saved her love for him, a white man. Because in her world, I would never be good enough. No matter how much I gave her or how deeply I loved her, I'd always be less in her eyes. You ever wonder what it's like to feel that kind of hate from the person you love? Imagine finding out your partner despised the very thing that makes you who you are. How do you even begin to deal with that? People look at us and see a fairy tale. Big house, fast cars, exotic vacations. Bianca and I, we're the couple everyone envies, the perfect pair. Beautiful wife, successful husband, a life that makes people whisper in admiration. They look at her, blonde hair, blue eyes, and think, how lucky is she? But when they look at me, it's different. You can see it in their eyes, and the ones that don't even try to hide their surprise. Like they're still wondering how I, a black man from a middle-class background, ended up with someone like her. I used to wonder about that too. 5 years of marriage. From the outside, it looks perfect. The dream life, right? I own businesses, properties. We've traveled the world together. We host dinners that people talk about for weeks. Bianca fits right into that world. She was made for it. Or so I let myself believe. But if I'm honest, there's always been a quiet feeling in the back of my mind. A whisper that things aren't quite as they seem. You ever feel like your life looks perfect on the outside, but deep down, something feels off? Like no matter how good it seems, something's missing? Let me know in the comments if you felt that. I didn't grow up in this world of luxury. My parents were hardworking, middle class, the kind of people who knew the value of a dollar. They taught me that nothing would ever be handed to me, especially not as a black man. So I worked, I studied, I built my life from the ground up and earned every bit of success I have. I made it, I achieved what they said I couldn't. But success, it has its own cost. You don't just fight to get to the top, you fight to stay there. And the higher you climb, the more you realize that not everyone smiling in your face is rooting for you. I thought Bianca was different. I wanted to believe she was. We met at a charity gala. You know the type. Fancy dresses, champagne flutes, and people with more money than they know what to do with, all pretending to care about some cause for a night. I didn't want to be there. I'm not the charity event type. But that's where she was. She was beautiful, more than beautiful. She had this confidence, this presence, blonde hair cascading down her shoulders, bright eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. But it wasn't just her looks that drew me in. It was the way she carried herself. She wasn't like the other women there, who all had that same shallow aura. No, Bianca felt real, down to earth, genuine. Or at least, that's what I thought at the time. She came from a modest background too. I remember thinking, finally, someone who understands what it's like not to have everything handed to you. We talked for hours that night, about our lives, our dreams, our ambitions. There was an instant connection. I thought I'd found someone who saw me for who I was, not what I had. We were inseparable after that. We got married a year later. Everything moved fast, but when it feels right, you don't question it. Or at least, I didn't. I thought we were building something real, a life based on love, trust, and understanding. But looking back now, I realize I was only seeing what I wanted to see. Back then, I thought I had it all. Bianca seemed perfect. But perfection, I've come to learn, is just a mask, and sooner or later, masks slip. You know, love has this funny way of blinding you. You think you know someone, you think you figured them out, but then, slowly, So slowly you almost don't notice, it starts to change. Bianca wasn't always like this. At first, she was everything I thought I wanted: attentive, loving, present. But looking back now, I can see the shift. It wasn't sudden. No, it crept in, bit by bit, like a shadow growing longer as the day fades. At first, it was little things. She started spending more time on her phone. Harmless, right? We all do it. But then it became secretive. Her stepping out of the room to take calls, her smile fading the second she'd hang up. She started locking her phone more, guarding it like it held her life's deepest secrets. I'd ask her about it casually, and she'd brush it off with that same smile that used to make me feel like the luckiest man alive. "Oh, just work stuff," she'd say. Or, "You know how it is, nothing important." She was so casual about it, so dismissive, that I wanted to believe her. And for a while, I did. But the distance was there, growing wider by the day. Weekends became girls' trips or solo retreats she never needed before. And when she was home, she wasn't really there. I'd talk to her and she'd nod along, but her eyes were somewhere else. Her mind always elsewhere. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. I mean, it's normal, right? After a few years, people change. Life gets busy. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, seeing problems where there weren't any. After all, she always had that smile, that charm. She knew exactly how to put me at ease, how to make me doubt myself. She'd kiss me on the cheek, run her fingers through my hair and tell me I was working too hard, that I needed to relax. "You worry too much," she'd say, laughing it off like I was crazy for even asking. And for a while, I believed her. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You trust them. Even when your gut is screaming that something's wrong, you try to ignore it. But you can only ignore it for so long. The trips became more frequent, the calls more secretive. When I'd ask where she was going, she always had an answer ready, but her stories, they stopped lining up. There were gaps, little inconsistencies that didn't make sense. She'd say she was staying with a friend, but then mention details that didn't add up. I'd catch glimpses of her texts, and when I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd laugh it off, saying it was someone from work. But the way she laughed, it wasn't the same. It felt forced, hollow, like she was performing for me. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband, paranoid over nothing. So I kept quiet, telling myself I was imagining it, that Bianca wouldn't do that to me. Not after everything we'd built together. But there was this feeling, this weight in my chest that wouldn't go away. No matter how many times I tried to brush it off, it always came back. And that's when I knew. It wasn't just in my head. Bianca was hiding something. Something big. I didn't know what it was yet, but I was gonna find out. I couldn't pretend anymore. Ignoring the signs, making excuses, those days were over. My gut wouldn't let it go. The life I'd built felt like it was on the brink of collapse, held together by lies I was too scared to confront. Bianca had a way of keeping me off balance, making me doubt myself. Not this time. I needed the truth. Confronting her directly? Pointless. She'd laugh it off, play innocent, twist things until I felt like the paranoid fool. No, I needed proof. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. That's when everything got real. The decision left a bitter taste in my mouth. It felt wrong, like crossing an invisible line. But I couldn't confront her empty-handed. If I was wrong, I'd destroy my marriage for nothing. But if I was right, I needed to be ready. I met the investigator, a quiet, no-nonsense guy named Marcus, at a rundown diner. He listened without judgment, nodding as I laid everything out. The distance, the secrets, the lies that didn't add up. He didn't pry. He just slid me his card and said, "Give me a couple of weeks." Weeks. The longest of my life. I lived in a fog, glued to my phone, dreading every notification. Each text chime felt like a death knell. Nights were the worst, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Marcus was seeing, what she was doing. Every time Bianca left the house, I braced for the fall. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, Marcus sent the first report. My hands trembled as I opened the file. The photos were grainy, but clear enough. Bianca sitting at a cafe, laughing over coffee with a man I didn't recognize. They weren't touching, just talking. But the way she leaned in, the way she smiled, it twisted my stomach into knots. Who was he? Why hadn't she mentioned him? I tried not to jump to conclusions, but it was too late. My mind raced. Was this the man behind all those secret calls, the solo trips, the locked phone? Was he what she'd been hiding? Marcus urged patience. This was just the beginning. But there was no going back. Doubt had taken root, growing with every second of silence. I couldn't look at her the same. Every smile, every touch felt rehearsed. When she kissed my cheek or asked about my day, I wondered if she'd just come from seeing him. Every time her phone buzzed, I wanted to snatch it from her hands, demand answers. But I held back. The next reports crushed what little hope I had left. It wasn't just coffee. They met often. Bars, hotels, places that left nothing to interpretation. They weren't old friends. They were something much worse. The walls of my life closed in, trapping me in a reality I couldn't escape. My marriage, our history, crumbled with every damning photo, every cold detail Marcus uncovered. I wanted to confront her, scream, why? But I knew better. If I moved too soon, she'd twist it, lie her way out. She was good at that. I had to wait, had to know. I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing everything I thought we'd built. Every memory, every promise, stained by betrayal. And the worst part, I still didn't know why, but I was about to find out. Marcus worked fast. Each new report hit harder than the last, like blows I couldn't block. This wasn't some fleeting affair, it was routine, frequent, years. Every girls' trip, yoga retreat, and solo getaway to clear her head was a lie. She wasn't rediscovering herself, she was with him. Jason. I should have seen it, the distance creeping in, the coldness in our bed, the endless excuses, work stress, feeling off, needing space. And like a fool, I believed her. I was too busy building a life she could have never had on her own. I trusted her, and she played me. Jason was everything I wasn't. White, plain, average. They had history, and that history never ended. She'd traded him for me, security, wealth, status, but she never really left him. He was her dirty secret, her hidden indulgence. Then came Marcus's final report. They weren't just sneaking around like reckless lovers, they were plotting. I watched grainy footage from a rundown motel's parking lot. Bianca stood close to Jason, her hand resting on his arm, laughing like they were still teenagers. I could hear them, clear enough to shatter whatever denial I had left. I can't keep doing this much longer. He's suspicious, Bianca snapped, her voice sharp and tense. Jason smirked, arrogant and sure. We just need more time. He'll sign the papers. He's too damn stupid to know what's going on. Once we've got the money, we're gone. My stomach twisted. The papers. The one she'd been pushing me to sign for weeks. A business deal she claimed would secure our future and make us millions. I'd been stalling, unable to shake the feeling that something was off. Now I knew why. They weren't just betraying me, they were planning to rob me. Bianca, the woman I'd given everything to, and Jason, the man she could never quite let go of, were setting me up. They thought I'd fall for it, sign the papers, hand over my fortune, and be left with nothing. They thought I was stupid. They thought I'd never see it coming. The truth hit like a punch to the chest. Bianca never loved me. Not really. She loved what I could provide. Jason couldn't give her more than promises and cheap motel rooms, but together they saw a future paved with my money. They were planning to disappear, leaving me broken and ruined. And the worst part? They were probably laughing at me, mocking me while they planned to destroy everything I'd built. But they underestimated me. They thought they could outplay me, thought I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. I never imagined my life could unravel so completely. But the more Marcus uncovered, the clearer it became. Bianca wasn't just having an affair, she was orchestrating the ultimate betrayal. The first photos had been hard enough to stomach. Bianca and Jason leaning close at an upscale restaurant, laughing like old lovers, sharing private jokes. Out of context, they could have been any couple enjoying dinner. But I knew the context, and it hit like a gut punch. They were comfortable, casual, like they didn't have a care in the world. As Marcus kept digging, the images grew more intimate. Lingering touches, secretive smiles, their bodies angled toward each other with a familiarity that cut deep. It wasn't just an affair, it was a relationship, a life they were living behind my back. But the photos were nothing compared to the recordings. The first one came through late one night as I sat alone, sifting through Marcus's latest report. I hesitated, heart pounding, before pressing play. Bianca's voice came through, cold and sharp. I only married him for his money, Jason. What did you expect? She scoffed, her tone laced with contempt. You know I'd never have married him if he wasn't loaded. He's just a ticket. And honestly, I'm getting tired of playing nice. Her words landed like a slap. My chest tightened, but before I could process it, she went on. I mean, look at him. Her voice dripped with venom. He's black. You think I'd be caught dead with him if he didn't have that bank account? Please, he's nothing but a paycheck. I froze. Her voice echoed in my head, slicing deeper with every replay. She hadn't just used me, she despised me, reduced me to my race and my wealth, nothing more. The woman I built a life with, shared my deepest hopes and fears with, saw me as a tool, a means to an end. Then Jason, ever the smug fool, chimed in with a laugh. You're so damn smart, Bianca. Once he signs those papers, we're set, no more pretending. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to smash my phone. They thought they were so clever, so invincible, plotting to rob me blind while I was none the wiser. But I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. Years of sacrifices, of building a future, of trusting her, all for what? So she could mock me behind my back, scheme with her pathetic excuse of a lover, and tear me down like I was nothing? I thought back to all the subtle signs I'd ignored, the guarded phone calls, the sudden trips, the way she'd brush off my questions with practiced ease. She'd always been so good at making me doubt myself, at twisting reality until I felt like the paranoid one. But now, there was no denying it. Bianca hadn't just cheated on me, she'd dehumanized me. She'd used my love, my loyalty, my life, all while plotting my downfall with Jason. The betrayal burned hotter with each passing second, but beneath the hurt, something else stirred. Resolve. She thought I was weak. She thought I'd never see through her lies. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to cry, beg, or demand answers. I wasn't going to let them walk away with everything I'd built. This wasn't about revenge. It was war. And I was going to make damn sure Bianca paid for every lie, every scheme, and every ounce of contempt she ever felt toward me. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. I wasn't going to let Bianca see how deeply she had cut me. So I played the part of the oblivious husband. I smiled when I saw her, kissed her like everything was fine, and acted like nothing was wrong. But deep down, my heart was a storm of rage and betrayal. For the next few days, I kept up the act. We went out to dinner, I let her take those phone calls that I knew were from Jason, and I continued to play her game. All the while, my mind was focused on one thing, the moment of truth. I had already set everything in motion. The private investigator's evidence, the recordings, the pictures, they were all in my hands. I had arranged for everything to go down at our house, in the one place where Bianca thought she was safe. It was supposed to be a celebration, I told her. I even told her I had a surprise for her. What she didn't know was that the surprise would be the moment her world came crashing down. The dinner was staged, not for romance, but for closure. I wanted Bianca to feel at ease, to believe she still had control. I played the role of the calm, devoted husband she thought she'd mastered manipulating. She walked in, radiant as always, with her smile polished but hollow, a mask she wore when she needed to bury guilt. We shared a pleasant meal, making small talk about her work and her carefully crafted lies. I listened, steady and unreadable, even as anger coiled tight in my chest. She never saw it coming. When the plates were cleared, I rose and walked to the side table where the evidence waited. Her eyes tracked me, curiosity flickering, but no suspicion. Not yet. I slid the folder across the table. Her expression shifted the moment she saw the first photo, her and Jason at the restaurant. What is this? She stammered, her voice brittle. I didn't answer. I pressed play on the recorder. Her own voice echoed through the room, cold and unrepentant. I only married him for his money, Jason. What did you expect? You know I'd never have married him if he wasn't rich. The blood drained from her face. Bianca, I said quietly, my voice steady but firm. It's all here. Photos, recordings, every lie you thought you could hide. I know about you and Jason, I know about the affair, and I know about your plan to steal from me. She opened her mouth, but no words came. She tried again, voice trembling. Chris, I can explain. Don't. My tone cut like steel. Don't insult me with more lies. Her panic deepened. She glanced from the evidence back to me, desperation cracking through her perfect facade. Chris, please, it wasn't like that. I was confused. We can fix this. I can fix this. I stepped closer, cold fury tightening my words. You don't get to fix anything. You used me. You lied. You cheated. You only married me for my money, and now you fix me. To believe this is fixable, her mask shattered. Tears spilled down her face, her voice ragged with desperation. But I felt nothing. "I'm sorry," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "I was wrong. Please don't do this." I leaned down, slow and deliberate, and pushed the divorce papers across the table. "Sign them." She blinked, stunned. "My lawyer's already moved every asset. My money's locked down. You get nothing. You and Jason lost before you even started." Her breath hitched, trembling fingers hovering over the pen. "Chris, please, don't let it end like this." "It ended the moment you chose him." Her shoulders slumped. Defeated, she signed the papers with shaking hands, and just like that, it was over. I watched her for a moment. This woman I'd once loved, now reduced to a hollow, pleading stranger. There was no anger left, no sadness, just relief. It was done. For the first time in years, I was free. There was one final piece of unfinished business: Jason. He'd skulked in the shadows, content to let Bianca take the risks while he reaped the rewards. But I wasn't about to let him slip away unnoticed. I arranged a meeting under the guise of a business deal, ensuring they both would be present. They walked in together, side by side, but worlds apart in demeanor. Bianca still clung to her practiced calm, her eyes flicking toward me with thinly veiled disdain, as if I were the one out of place. Jason strutted in with his usual air of entitlement, shoulders back, chin high, arrogance personified. For a split second when he saw me sitting there, collected and unreadable, unease flickered across his face. But he quickly masked it with a smirk. He thought he still had the upper hand. He was wrong. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I stood, laid the evidence out like a prosecutor delivering the final blow. Photos, recordings, financial records. Every sordid detail, every twisted lie, all laid bare. Their plan was dead before it even began, and now they were finally realizing it. Jason's smirk cracked first. His cocky bravado evaporated as he stared at the damning proof. Bianca's mask shattered next. Her hands trembled, though she clenched her jaw, still too proud to plead. "You really thought you could get away with this?" I asked, my voice low and controlled. "You thought you could steal from me, destroy me, and walk away?" Jason opened his mouth but couldn't form words. His eyes darted to Bianca, searching for reassurance, but she was frozen, staring at the wreckage of their failed scheme. "It's over." My tone was icy. "Your little plan, your lies, your future together? Done." Behind the scenes, my lawyer was already working. The prenup Bianca signed was ironclad. She wouldn't see a dime. Jason, the parasite he'd always been, had no legal claim to anything. Every asset they'd set their sights on was locked down, unreachable. The realization hit them like a tidal wave. Bianca's defiant mask cracked. She was too proud to grovel, but her face twisted with barely concealed panic. Jason sagged in defeat, stripped of his arrogance, his future shattered along with his schemes. He looked at me one last time, not with anger or defiance, but with genuine fear. And just like that, it was over. The days that followed were quiet. I spent them alone, processing what had happened. Not just the betrayal, but how blind I'd been. For years, I believed in a version of Bianca that never existed. I let love cloud my judgment, allowed myself to be manipulated, deceived, but now I saw everything clearly. Betrayal isn't always a sudden stab in the back. It's often slow, insidious, disguised as love until the truth is impossible to ignore. I'd faced that truth, and I'd survived. It hurt, but I walked away with my dignity intact. I hadn't let them break me. I fought back. I won. But more than anything, I reclaimed myself. I stood by the window one evening, breathing in the crisp air of a new beginning. "I'm done," I whispered.